Welcome to the Condor DM. Let me try this again. Welcome to the Condor DM show, baby. What's up? Yeah, here I am. Early as usual, right? Early as usual. Let's see what we're talking about. Tonight, somebody on Discord asked me about how I handle travel. I would assume they're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, of course, the most obvious. When it comes to a question like that, at least for the most part. So I got asked in Discord a straight old school generic question about D&D and travel. We'll assume it's about D&D. And then I watched the recent video that Matt Colville put out. And I have a few responses to some of the things he said in there. I look at a guy like that, and I know he's well studied or he's he's looked into stuff, but the way he paints a certain picture, I believe he is incorrect in some areas. Like he talks about the lack of spending. I think it's more aimed at the old school. He says he says it definitely comes from there, but it's something that carries on, like a lack of spending. And he talked about paid game mastering. Now, I've already done some content on that, but I definitely want to bring it up again and respond to some of the things that he said in his video. Because he's making a new game and he's looking at how people see the market and who's willing to spend what on what and what that means. And his vision is it's good for the market. There's two sides: people that don't spend, people that do spend. I'm like, I don't think there is two sides. I don't think there's a side that doesn't spend. I just think it's the perception is that maybe, I guess, from his point of view and some others and some store owners, is they don't spend. But I'm like, well, they do. Because he said in his video, well, some of these people that don't spend, they definitely have money. And I'm like, well, I'll get into it. Paid game mastering, he was talking about, like, why do people have an issue with this, right? So I want to talk about that stuff because I know the paid game mastering stuff can be a bit of, I guess, a sensitive topic for some. But sometimes I think people in the hobby, they push things because there's a very negative agenda behind it, right? So I want to talk about that. And again, there was a Discord question about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm assuming it's about that because it's usually when you hear a basic question about how do you handle travel, and you assume it's about D&D. So we'll talk about that soon. But I'll give it a few minutes here. I'm not just going to speed into these topics. If you haven't watched Matt Colville's video, maybe you will after this. But I mean, I'm pretty much going to paint out at least a few areas. I'm going to touch on what he pretty much said. I'm not going to quote him. But I'm definitely going to talk about some of the stuff he said. And I think his views are misguided when it comes to viewing, say, the old school, a tradition in the old school of not spending money on the product. I just think it's not true. Good evening there, Philo. And I would say it's not just that I don't think it's true. I know it's not true at all. Like, they do. But it's how does the old school spend its money? That's the important detail. It's not that it doesn't, it's how. So it does, but it's how. And when you look at how the old school spends, a lot of the guys in the old school spend their money, you'll realize right away why there's a lot of things they don't put money towards. And game shops over the years might notice when I didn't even know Coochie was around. I got to check that because sometimes when Coochie's around, it never. I don't know what's going on with Restream. It never lets me know Coochie is talking. Coochie, baby. What's up? What's up, Coochie? You're the one that asked the question. I will respond to your question for sure. But let me make it that I can see you. That would be helpful. At least slightly helpful. Slightly. Good stuff. Matt Colville, maybe I don't know. I haven't watched his recent video on travel. If that's what you're talking about, another Matt I don't know about. I'm not sure which Matt guy you're talking about there, buddy boy. Not sure, not 100% sure. But either way, I'm definitely going to tell you how I handle it. And I think it's a pretty much down the middle way of handling travel, because travel is part, you should, all right, let's talk about it. Let's talk about travel in Dungeons and Dragons. It's a pretty simple and straightforward way that I approach travel, because I've been doing it for so long that you get into a routine. So, yeah, and then he's wrong on a bunch of stuff too there, Philo. So it varies, and I'm not. It's not a criticism. He's right and wrong. It's just when he's right, man, he's on point. There's no doubt. A lot of very wise things Matt Colville says. I'll totally agree. Then there's a lot of areas where it's just a level of inexperience. Now I know, and I'm not trying to be egotistic here, but look, you're coming to me, a guy who has amount, and it's not a brag thing. It's not the amount of years I've been in the hobby. I'm not one of these guys. I don't care about your 30 or 40 years. To me, gaming experience matters to me more. And so when it comes to straight out just running the game and doing gaming stuff, I have a mountain more experience than he does, right? Like I remember watching some of his sessions where it would have been good for him to have had a talk with me. Like, so as much as he could sound wise when he's telling you about the gaming stuff, when you actually go watch him run it, that's where you really see the inexperience tripping him up. Like really badly too. Like in some cases, really, really poorly and really badly. And I would have loved to have had a talk with him as a guy who's just had more time in the gimmick, right? Yeah, but that's Philo. When you say stuff like that and you say it vaguely and you can't explain yourself, and then when I watch you run the game, you don't know how to make players feel the world and not the rules. It's nice to say poetic stuff like that, Philo, but the difference is when you come here to me, I can explain the details about the atmosphere, how to feel it and how to go down. I don't just say some poetic words. Matt has a history, or it's not to attack him, but he says very poetic things, but then can't fucking back it up in the game. It's like if I said, okay, what do you mean by that, Matt? Well, Matt can't explain it to you because Matt can't even do it when he's running the game properly. So that's where I would criticize Matt. Right. In some instances, he gets something close to it, but it's like you can just see the inexperience. It's like, it's nice to say shit like that, dude. Philo, a lot of people say poetic stuff in the hobby. A lot of people talk very vaguely. And it's, I do criticize. Look, it's that curse of knowledge. Right? You don't know how many times I've heard people say things that are true in the sense that that's what you want, but you need to be able to pull it off, right? I appreciate that, Star Blazer, and I appreciate the compliments. Really, I really do. I really appreciate it, and that was a great, interesting guy. I'm glad you enjoyed that too. That's Sam OG. I don't know if you've ever like checked out Ruin Slinger and Sam OG, but I mean, there's some minds. There's some worthwhile time, and if you don't know who they are, you, I will sit here and yeah, definitely give a promotion to them and say yes, they have my support. You should go check out their content. Ruin Slinger does so many reviews, and so does Sam OG. They do reviews on games, and the guys really know their stuff. And look, when you go in there, you have to take it with a grain of salt because these guys are talking, and they do come up with coded words. They come up with ways of labeling what they're doing. But trust me, when they will go into the details, and that's what you're going to listen for, right? You might be like, emergent play, what do they mean by it? Well, they'll actually explain, which is really, really genius. But I really appreciate the compliment, Starblaze. I'm glad you enjoyed that. So, and I'm not trying to down on Matt Colville here, Philo. I like Matt Colville. You've heard me say many things about it. I think he's definitely a leading in the old school sense, right? Oh, we're gonna talk about the game master, pay game master stuff, because he brought Matt Colville brought that up recently. But let's get to the travel stuff, Coochie, which is what you brought up in Discord. So I'll give you the straight and narrow. I think it's pretty simple. It's not hard. It's a mix of speed, like push travel, right? And so here's I would say it's simple. When you start out, you definitely on that first night you want to establish that they're traveling. You're probably not going to encounter most something like combat outside of a city right away. It's okay to have an encounter with a merchant coming towards the city, that running into people on your way out of the city. That could be common, right? That you're running into people that are traveling to the city and just getting there. So you could run to a merchant, people on their way there, people that you might have even heard about in the city, like that these guys are going to be here soon, and here you are encountering them before they even arrive when you leave. That can be okay. So like a social encounter. So you don't just speed through the day. And on that first night of camping, I like to establish that first day out, like, and then you're not going to slow down. Like I mean, you're going to slow down, but you're going to camp. We're not going to speed up the process too much, right? Now, of course, common sense. I don't count every moment of the day. I'm not real time in that way. So it might be like you travel out for 2 hours. I'll say 2 hours go by. You run into somebody who's on their way. Maybe it's 3 or 4 hours. You run into somebody coming towards the city or the town. That could be the social encounter. If we're skipping that, I might say, okay, most of the day has gone by. Like, you know what I mean? You're going to get to the point of you are looking for a place to camp. We're going to establish that you're looking for a spot to camp. Maybe even quickly go over the details of establishing what that camp is, like where you're going to do it. And I'm going to ask you some details because I'm going to make that important, even on the minute nights, because some nights it could be that you're under threat. And I want to get you into a routine. And so I want to play poker face here. And that's for your sake as a player, right? Poker face means I'm going to ask you details even when it's not necessary, just so you don't think like, oh, tonight's fine. And other nights when I ask you details, oh, there could be an encounter. Like I don't want to give that away. So I want this the same routine. Where you're going to camp, how safe you're going to be, and find a practice that you like. And we'll talk about the area and whatnot. Once the camp is pretty much set up, it won't be like I step through everything, but it'd be like, we're going to set up here. Okay, you guys do this. You could do this. Camp is going to set up. You got a fire going, stuff like that. I'm not going to stress a lot of things. On that first night, I definitely want to encourage some time to talk about what you're on your way to do, what things you figured out in the city. It's almost like let's look at the time you be in the city or the town doing stuff, talking to people, purchasing stuff, and what you plan to do, maybe the job you're on. Let's establish a conversation. It's another chance for players to practice, especially early, especially if this is the start of the campaign and this is your first trip out. But this routine can continue no matter what part of the campaign you're at. Whenever you're leaving, I want to establish that first night is, let's have an overview with the characters talking. A 70s game is called Beast Lord last week. Not often I become aware of a game I haven't at least heard of before. Looks like a great game too. There's a few excellent guys on X that really know some vague games that I missed out that I would consider old school. Like I have a pretty big list of games that I have played or ran. And I thought I ran into every game, but there's some guys on there. The guy that occasionally you might see him around other chats, but occasionally he'll post up here too. You'll see him as the name Monkey, but he's like Charles or something on X. The guy knows some vague games, right? So he'll post those often. Just about everybody else's post games I know about, which is fine. But I'm just saying this Charles guy, or he goes by Monkey here, as you might have seen him in my chat, will post up on X. You got to go to X and find his thing there, but it's like Charles Miller or something on there or something like that. And he'll post up games that I'm just like, wow, you didn't know that game existed. Wow. And I thought I knew every game, but yeah. So there's quite a few games out there that I thought I that I didn't realize I missed out on, to the point where, as much as I'm trying to sort of get to know some new games, I've been considering looking at some of the games that he posts about. But anyway, so on that first night leaving a town or a city, I want a chance to sort of do a refresher. Give players a chance to practice that social interaction between the characters, build up that comfort between players. Oh, amazing! I love it. I love finding new stuff. 100%. It's not a negative thing. As much I like to think I know most, but it's like, what a pleasant surprise. Yeah, I mean that, Starblazer. What a pleasant surprise to run into a game where you're just like, well, that's fucking awesome. Sometimes some of the vague games can be a little not so good. I found out that's probably why I never heard of some. In some cases, very rare cases, I find some gems which I'm quite happy to have found. Yeah, I had to point that out because that was and I really had to do the contrast. It wasn't to insult D&D people, but it was Starblazer. I think you'd appreciate this as someone who likes Dragon Quest. They did what other people claimed D&D was doing, but they did it. They did it. You would think from a wargamer point of view, the way a wargamer would really want it. That's why the contrast to me was so important, because a lot of wargamers, this, Starblazer, are a little sour with D&D, right? Quite a few of them. But a lot of wargamers, maybe somebody like yourself, a wargaming mindset, really thought, I've talked to them, they thought Dragon Quest did the thing in a more proper way, in that mindset, more towards what they would think a game is going to be, where they thought some of these areas weren't as strict or properly done in D&D. But I mean, that's just contrast. It doesn't mean I think it's better. It's not nothing like that. It's just to say, here's definitely, if you were to try to make D&D more pleasant, more approachable for more wargamers, you get Dragon Quest. That would be my argument. Like, Dragon Quest is more tailored to what they wanted D&D to be. And I don't know. You might agree with that, or you might not. But I thought I love Dragon Quest too, so I appreciated a lot of Dragon Quest. I've done a lot of gaming with Dragon Quest. But anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed that. I knew you would, because I know you're a fan of it, and I made sure to get that right. I bring that principle to every game I cover. It's just because I know the nerds out here are going to watch it. If I'm quite happy, quite satisfied with my work, because it's not about just the charisma and all that, but getting the facts right, because I get a lot of guys like Philo here and other people that will come to games that they prefer. And when I cover them, man, I try to get just right on with the facts, just so people that appreciate it can walk away going, that's awesome that you presented that game that I like really well. Right? Because it lets other people know about the game they love. And maybe they're not YouTubers, right? They're not sitting there getting some details out, and here's somebody just delivering it. And plus, I'm talking about something you like. You know how that works. It's always good, right? Always good. Okay. Sorry to be all over the place, Coochie, here with the traveling thing, but let's say so I'm getting you step one here. Leaving, I want to get a little bit of skip time, maybe to a social interaction. But yes, I do want to have that first camping night. In most D&D games, you're not just going to continue to travel. Because outside the town or the city, this is the medieval fantasy world, the wilds, and you never know what you're stepping into. So there's a little bit of a routine, slow pace, and I just sort of stick to the routine. I don't bother trying to reinvent the wheel. So we go to camp, and camp is a great chance to, especially early on, have players talk in character a lot to the other players in character. And I want that to be common practice. I don't want a lot of talk outside the game. Like, I don't want to hear your jokes about the gas station. Like, I don't want this. Look, in some games, like, we're talking about D&D here, so just in the D&D realm, I want a lot of talk, the majority, 99% of your talk, in character. Like, outside of, the 1% is questions. And as long as they're not silly questions, I don't, because I don't count every question as "Mother, may I?" Right? But clarifying things in that, I think, are quite good, just to make sure we're all on the same page. But outside of that, I want most talk to be in character. And so it's great to establish that. Plus, the more you talk to each other in character, the more comfortable you are talking to other people in character. And the more comfortable you guys are as players talking in character, the more you establish a comfort of teamwork. Like, you're not military people, we're average people, right? But one thing you know about the military is comfortable, straightforward, direct, comfortable, communication where you know what lines you can press, what you can say to people, the comfort to be able to tell a joke without people being offended because now they know each other. Establishing that type of level of understanding between characters and the people playing them, the more you get that talk going, the more that gets established, and that comfort becomes a thing, and that communication becomes really effective for later teamwork when you just got to say to each other how it is for the sake of getting forward, like doing something, right? Weakness. I think it's a game's strength, unique mechanics and spell system. I thought was good. Enjoyed many hours. Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you heard what I said in the thing. I love how they went at it. Way more strict in certain areas, and exactly what a war gamer would want it to be, right? Like going into the details, establishing certain things. A lot less a lot less loose stuff, and more structure. And war gamers do like I mean, that's just straight down to its structure, right? Even if you're going to allow a lot of freedom, it's almost like war gamers like this. They know where their freedom is, but they also need structure to make that freedom work. And you need to balance those two things together. When I started playing Warhammer, that's what I noticed straight away. The Warhammer guys, because that was one of my first real drill into really getting serious about some wargaming, was they really, really, really love the structure. But once that structure is set, established, and understood, then it's the freedom to play within that structure the way you want, right? And so, in a way, pure sandbox is perfect for them because it's structure and then freedom, right? Complete freedom. There's a complete freedom once you understand certain things. And that goes to the Traveler sandbox. Uh, that's where the sandbox really comes from, is wargaming. But anyway, I'm getting all over the place here with the traveling stuff for Gucci. Okay, so that first night is get to that, and then it's like, okay, how do I speed through travel beyond that point? It's a mix of things. Like what I do is I look at, like, you might have skills for hunting and other things. There might be scenery that's going to be specific to lore or interest or me wanting to create a feel. There could be weather events, right? And there, of course, there can be encounters, social, combat. And so all of these type of potential things that could happen, from hunting to the scenery to let you get to know the setting a bit more. Sometimes it could be lore, sometimes it could be for a feel. I'm going to count these as little events that I want to make happen. When I have them happen, I'm going to zoom in, but during the time they're not happening, a lot of it is going to be a sort of sped through. But once we get to it, and I get to the part where it might be a scene, it could even lead to lore. It could be for hunting. It could be a church, so it could be a random place. It could be a weather event. It could be the encounter, social or combat. I'm not going to just rush you usually just straight into the encounter, straight into somebody, straight into this, or straight into anything. What I do is I go, so many hours go by, and then we're going to zoom in. And that zoom in time is also going to give you time to talk to each other while you travel. So zooming in, once I zoom in, I don't mind. That's a little bit giveaway to the players that something is going to be coming in. Okay, it's like so many hours go by, you guys are traveling on the road here, you're moving forward. I never just usually instantly, I mean, in most cases, I don't usually just instantly say something's happening, right? Uh, and the characters will be like, I'll give some details, like, this many hours went by. It could be, in some cases, it could be like a day or two has gone by. Like, if it's that uneventful, remember, we're thinking events here. If it's that uneventful, I could say a day or two went by. I could say something simple, like you scratch off some food, right? If you're, watching your rations or whatnot. Uh, but if not, it could be hours. It could be the next day and the event's going to happen. It could be 2 days before the event happens. And so I'll do that and then I'll zoom in. And basically, you're going to play out that part. You're going to ride by the thing and I give you details. You can go check it out. You can go check the church out. You can go hunting. You can deal with the weather coming in because that's going to be an event. You can deal with the encounter. You can deal with that. We're going to play that out. Once that's played out, it could be, okay, we're going to lead. I'm going to speed up a few hours, maybe to camping or to whatever's next. And then, of course, it could be like, okay, you're heading back out in the morning, maybe, to make sure you're prepared for the next so many days or something. It could be preparation time, talk in the morning. It's all about a balancing factor here, right? And again, if we go back to non-eventful things happening, unless you choose to want to tell me, like as a player, you can also say to me, okay, game master, DM, for the next 2 days, because I don't think anything's going to be happening. You purposely want to use your herbal skill to look for herbs. You want to go out of your way for the hunting thing, right? If something's not obvious, you're really going to ride your horse out, every so often away from the group, enough that you can see them, but just to see if you can see something far off. Really pushing for the hunting, even if I'm not, just saying you might spot something off by like creating an event for you, right? So there's many ways you can really drill your skills at me. I mean, sometimes I might just say you're running by herbs, but I'm going to assume you're just traveling normally. And then I'll make that an event. If you want to go to your way for looking for stuff, you can notify me and I'm willing to improvise stuff like that in through dice rolls, decisions, and whatnot. So the players can also inject themselves into wanting to do stuff, right? So if they can come up with something using a skill or whatnot, if they're looking for something specific, they can inject. In some cases, they might not find anything. In some cases, they might find something. It doesn't always have to be a skill they're looking for. It could be something unique. Like I'm going to travel so far out to see if I can see any shacks or cabins as we're traveling. If I see any place, I want to go check it out. If I see smoke coming up far off in distance because I travel so far away from the group that I could just see them, I want to look for something unique that might not be obvious. Okay, I'll consider it. So as players, you can definitely inject some things to try to find other events that could happen. You could find somebody camping. You can hunt. You could find herbs that weren't so obvious. Beyond that, it's going to be events that I mix of planned and improvised. Right? Planned and improvised, because I want the journey to be something where you feel like you're on the journey, where we're stopping, zooming in, and you are participating with the movement, right? But it's not every hour of every single day. In some cases, it's not even every day. Like I say, like 2 days can go by. To me, beyond that, I might stop for camping events. So it doesn't have to be camping every night. But every second or third night, I'll randomly stop camping and I'll make sure just to stop for camping and make you go through it without there being anything happening. And sometimes it could be that there's danger, but also I'll do it minute for no reason. And why is that? It's just to keep that part unpredictable. I don't want to just zoom into camping when there's going to be danger, because then it's too much of a giveaway. I will purposely zoom into camping a mix of minute nights where it's more chance for you to talk in character, right? And you go by that night, next morning comes and you're like, okay, like nothing happened. Yeah. And if you are, as a player, wondering why I've done that randomly, it's just to let you know that I don't want you to ever know. I don't want to give it away. I don't want to spoil that thing for you where it becomes too obvious, right? Like game that way. I want it to feel random. So on the night that you might finally encounter some danger, if that were to happen, you won't know when it's coming. Right. So I'll purposely be random. I'm like that throughout the game in every area, purposely random. I'll purposely do stuff that is minute and uneventful, but I'll slow you down at a certain area of the game. You'll be like, okay, nothing happened here. And the next time I do it. You won't know if it means something or if it just means, okay, he's just stopping to let us talk for a second. That's on purpose. That is with it. I do that with intent on purpose to be random and unpredictable for the sake of your experience. Right. So that's how I get my players involved in the adventure and feeling it, experiencing the adventure by stopping at these events and dealing with them between places. Some travel could be less eventful, but there'll be events. There'll always be stuff happening when you travel in my game. Some travel, depending on how long, too. Some long travel could be very eventful. Some long travel could be almost nothing. I don't do like I've never bothered with hex crawl stuff. I do everything on my own. I don't roll random encounters. Never have, not in my life. I decide random encounters. I have monsters. I know I might work for an area and some odd ones. And I'll be honest with you, Coochie, and it's worked for me over the years because I'm such a random guy that my mind takes care of randomness. And if I really get off the wall, I'll maybe put a minor dice roll to myself, some type of high or low roll, to pick which odd monster I might use or odd situation. But I'm random enough just to be random, and then I'm good enough to I get at myself to not be repetitive. I'm just paying attention to not be repetitive. And this way, I can really control what's coming in. It's not so random. And a lot of what I'm going to do is going to feel planned, but in a good way. See, you'll never know what's the random encounter and what might be a planned encounter in the game. Right? I want so much control over it because my mind can edit things and get to the point where really the random encounter is more of a planned encounter by the time you actually encounter it because I've cycled it through my mind so many times on purpose, right? That there's a lot of planning, even if I'm planning it in the middle of the session. And that is to make it feel so you don't know. But that's my common sense way. I feel a lot of things out. I don't use a lot of charts or random encounter charts. Same thing with dungeons. I decide. Talking about travel, Coochie there asked a question about travel. Yeah, talked about the interview for a second. Starblazer was very happy with it. I appreciate some compliments he gave me, and then we mentioned some old games. Even brought up the Dragon Quest thing, which I knew he was happy about. And there you go, Coochie. That's how I handle travel in Dungeons and Dragons. It's a balance between some skipping events and everything else, right? And I'm into the nuance and complicated stuff. It could be the event is that you're crossing an old abandoned building, and then there's no limits. I'm not too simple on things. I'm always open minded with what I'll do at any moment. Like what complexity can I think of that I haven't, so sometimes it could be odd things that I don't consistently do and every time you're traveling, but I'm always open minded to what I can do. I never put a limit on myself, right? But there you go, Coochie. There's my answer to yes, I think the travel part is part of the experience where you should feel it. It should be something as part of the adventure, but also, of course, I don't sit there and focus hour to hour and everything else. One moment. Okay. But yeah, there you go. That's my common sense way of handling travel in Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, yeah, there's some weird background noise. Sorry about that, guys. Some things I have no control over, right? Some things I have no complete control over. It's part of life, not a soundproof room. But yeah, yeah, good, good. Coochie, you're responding. You asked a question. I answered it for you. There you go. I don't know how most people handle travel in their games. I do. I sort of do. It's always a mix of that, but I say you got to balance it over. Like my step of when you leave the town, uh, possible social encounters are always open door because it means because people are always on their way in. So you got to think of people always traveling in. So there's a likely chance that you will encounter somebody socially, right? Just saying. 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Had to verify. I heard my name once and had to verify real life. That's what happens when I start early. You're welcome. I think it's the social start is good. Uh, the camping early for that social interaction. And I really mean that, Coochie. You want to give that as much time early on because it's a mix of developing the character. Remember, the more players can speak, welcome there, Zeg. The more players have time to speak in character, the faster they develop a personality with the character, right? The more time they get to speak, the more comfortable they are. And even military people will tell you communication, the comfort of communication is great for teamwork. We're average people, but we're also playing a game where you're going out and fight. You're doing something in a sort of military role, so it's good to establish the one thing a group in real life that does is to say establish comfortable communication. I handle travel a little in the line of what would be appropriate. Avoid what would not, like combat in a random encounter. Things haven't been too long. Yeah, you're welcome, Coochie. Uh, see, Black Rose, if you had heard the bit, you have a way more simple approach to travel than I do. I look at travel as, of course, encounters, um, but events, weather events. What about the setting? Like Black Rose, do you think about the setting? Like when they're traveling, what about the scenery of the setting and the place that you want to communicate? Sometimes the scenery could even lead you to a piece where you're going to learn about the lore. If not, it just could be scenery to communicate the setting. I learned that through a lot of the non D&D games being very important of how you communicate, not just simplify everything down to just game terms of encounter, non encounter. Or what about skills like, say, hunting or herbalism? What about a church, a random abandoned church or some type of cabin or something? Again, weather events. What about that? What about social encounters and combat encounters? Some being random, some being on purpose, pre-planned. And then how do you handle that? Zoom in. I zoom in before they just happen to hit the thing, before they happen to hit the potential hunting option, just before they'll hit the church building. And I want to give players time to talk. Now, I also do some random stopping the camp stuff. Okay, 2 days go by, so there's no events happening, but we're going to stop and do some camping. Sometimes the camping is minute and nothing happens because I want to be unpredictable and random, right? And yes, I seen your response there, Coochie. Uh, I I hope that really does help because I know you're going to go game for tonight. And if you're doing D&D, I think my way is really a wise way to do it because it's so many benefits. Briefly, how surroundings shift from urban to rural farmstead, describing how the past signpost. Yeah, I mean that stuff I do, of course, too. But it's so much nuance to it, man. I that's why when people ask me a question, because I bring so much nuance to my approach to everything, and there's so many different games that do travel in unique ways, right? They do travel in unique ways, and you know me, Black Rose. What I do is when I go outside of D&D, especially, I carry a lot of concepts and demands from other games back over to D&D. because I like saying some games outside of D&D, just saying what the sky looks like, certain mountains, sort of scenery, like setting, reminding, say, not just a change in, say, signs or something, but the change of scenery. You're going from a forest to this because there's different, like a different biome or something like that, right? Making that very important to notice, and beautiful things, like beautiful scenery, like just randomly like that. Now, I'll do a mix of stuff like that where there's no encounter at all. Now, sometimes I could be slowing down for an encounter. Sometimes it could just be to see a building. Sometimes the building has nothing in it. Sometimes there's an encounter in the building. When I stop to do random camps, it's not every night, but when I do random camps, it could be one night is minute. You'd be like, "Oh, we just talked tonight. You just wake up in the morning." Yep, that's it. Like, okay. So, because I don't want you to know what night is going to be dangerous, or what night is going to be challenging, or what night you might have somebody sneak into your thing. So if I only stop on nights, if I only ever stop and slow down to nights where there can be an encounter coming, now that's giving it away. Now you can read my game mastering, right? And I purposely like to be unpredictable. Then also consider what players want to do, right? Cyberpunk is mostly in the city. Sometimes I warp them into other parts of the city. Other times I decide to have them where they're driving along motorway or through the streets. Well, it's. I hope some of these concepts should make sense even into the city. I know exactly what you're saying, and it's not too far off what I'm saying. It's like I won't warp it. If you get what I'm saying, like it's like let's say okay, it takes you an hour to get from here to here. You arrive at the place. Sometimes I might just do it for socializing. And there's no reason to have just slowed it down a bit, but I'll be random. Sometimes I'll randomize that, and there might be a threat, right? But again, that's the unpredictable part. When do I slow it down? Do I only slow it down for a threat? No, I'll purposely slow it down sometimes for minute reasons. But when I'm running Cyberpunk, it'd be like, okay, it takes you an hour to get here. Oh, there can be, but again, I would purposely because I this is the unpredictable side of me. I will do stuff where there could be danger and there's no and I slow it down, but there's no danger at all. That would include in Cyberpunk or in say in the travel. And then there could be another time where I'm slowing it down where then there's a threat, that you're going to encounter. And I want you to not know when I slow it down what that means. I want to put on a poker face, right? So you're very, very confused. Very, very confused of is this peaceful time or is this we're in shit time, right? A petrol station on the I mean, even the breakdown. It could be breakdown leads to punks coming out and threatening them, but the breakdown could be nothing too. See, that's part of where you get away, like, and this is not an attack on the storytelling gimmick. Story emerges, but sometimes this is where we get away from what you would normally do in a story because my randomness of stopping at a petrol station, if I were doing it, could be minute, could be a threat. If you're storytelling, you would never just do minute. That everything is going to be sort of eventful if you're storytelling. But if you're running a game, right, and the game is to trick players into what's a threat and what's not, you are stepping away from the essence of storytelling. You wouldn't just stop at the petrol station for no reason, and then the next time, here you are doing a fight. Right? That's a game focused thing. The same thing with travel. That's the story can emerge, but are we focused on doing a story? No, I'm focused on running a game. So at parts where for a story, it would be better to make sure every time you're stopping it is an eventful thing. I'm not. I'm doing it for the sake of messing with the minds because you're in a game, right? Yeah. Then, and the great thing is, I'm glad you totally make sense of it. The great thing is you leave your players not knowing when something's going to happen because there's an edge. Like, trust me, every time they stop to do something, they'll be like, "Are we?" But they know it's a because once you establish that it's a possibility that things won't happen, now they can actually go the next time if something happened. And this will carry over to future gaming with you as long as you're consistent with this randomness, right? And don't just go one stop is clean, next stop is encounter. Sometimes I'll do two stops that are clean, right? And you're like, okay, nothing so far. Two camps, completely peaceful. And then maybe the third one is an encounter, or maybe it's another nothing. But I stop. Now, in each case, here's the benefit as a bit of narrative. Here's the benefit, Zag. Each case, you're going to slow down the game, right? When you're stopping at the gas station. You're going to slow down the game when they're traveling in the car, right? That's more time for players to speak in character to each other. Look at it as a benefit. There is a mix of character development happening because they talk more in character. There's not a lot to do other than talk in character, right? But at the same time, there's one other effective thing. These are group-oriented games, even in Cyberpunk. Working together is good. D&D, working together is good. The more comfortable you are talking to each other and knowing each other so you don't offend each other, you know your lines, you can know where you can joke, you know where you can be really harsh. Like, it's nice to get to the point where you're talking to someone, and us guys know this, say playing some like a game where you're playing a war game or something where you're like, he's over, he's effing over there. Get on his ass. And his buddy just does. Why? Because there's a comfort in communication where just because buddy says, get on that fucking guy right now, that attitude is not taken as offensive. Where if you're on edge and you don't know each other, you might not speak that way. Or even if that's said, like, who the fuck do you think you're talking to? But if you're if you've done so much communication that the comfort in the lines where you know you can speak to each other hit, right? Yeah, a traffic jam. And again, the traffic jam could be encounter, could be nothing. And you want to make sure you're random so they never know. But I'm random like that in every part of the game. Like, sometimes I'll just slow something down when they're walking, say, just walking somewhere, say in a town or a city or something. Okay, you guys are walking over here. This is what you see. And there's no eventful thing happening for me to have stopped and tell them they're walking and they can look around. They know they're now in real time. They can talk to each other. Sometimes, again, like we said, it might be, okay, you take an hour and you reach the merchant, the business that you're looking for. Okay. It's just keeping yourself in check. If you don't want to be repetitive, just pay attention to what you're doing. That's all you got to do. Same thing with, I don't bother with random encounter tables in D&D. It's just making sure I'm on myself, right? I pay attention to what I'm doing. So I find that to be, as long as you keep yourself in check, I've done this for so long. I just don't feel the need for charts. Same. And then this type of thinking, this type of free thinking your feelings as a game master works in so many different games too. Like, it will be an established good skill to pick up, not just in D&D, but I mean, almost every game. Almost every game will benefit from you putting yourself in check so you're not repetitive, but also you being random. There's not too many tabletop role-playing games that aren't benefited by it. Well, that's it, Philo. That's exactly what I'm saying is you want to spread it out. You want to feel, you want the world to be bigger. You want to stop at places. You want to tell people about what the scenery is like. You want to express what it is. So you're not just, oh, here a week goes by, scratch off 7 days of food. That is fucking lame. That's straight up lame. So it's a balancer. It's a balancer of, and it works in the city with what Zeg is saying. It works in the traveling across from town to town or something, right? Well, that's exactly it. You don't have to. You don't got to go hour by hour. But that's what we're talking about here. Exactly right on, Philo. It is creating an illusion in the process. And that's it's really, Zag, that's all you really have to do. The only thing to make sure you're doing it well is to keep yourself in check. Like pay attention to your actions and what you're doing so you don't become repetitive or repeat a certain pattern. Right? The second you think you're on a pattern, break it on purpose. Like just intently. Like, oh, it was peace and then action. Peace and then okay. Now I'm doing the peace and action thing too many times. Okay. All right, peace, peace, or maybe action, 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 and then finally peace. Right? It basically it's just knowing to pay attention to yourself. And a lot of guys don't think of it that way. They just think, well, what if you're repetitive? That's what the charts now don't do. It all it does is you got to just watch yourself. That's it. That's it. But it's a mix of randomness, and it's not just a travel thing. Like Philo got it completely right. The illusion of the travel, but you can use it for all the things I'm talking about: character development, comfort with talking in character. I mean, that's a big part of travel is a lot of time to do that, right? Oh yeah, and Philo, here's when it comes to scares. A lot of people say, "Well, how do you scare players in a game?" Uh, I don't pretend to have perfect tricks like, "Oh, I can say something is spooky and it happens." Though you can do jump scares like, "Okay, you're going into that church. Okay, you come down. Something's like jumping over." I mean, you can say that. You hope players take it in as a jump scare, of course. But what's more effective? The most effective thing I know that scares players for real in just about any tabletop role playing game is knowing that you'll let, like, just say you're someone who fudges or you ease up on players or you give them too many chances to save themselves and they're not facing consequences. They're they don't face character death. They don't face a big threat coming their way. That becomes a little bit too eased up on. That's not good. But if you're someone who doesn't purposely make your game a meat grinder, but man, you do not hold back. When line hits, they know their character can die. They know every threat is something for them to take serious. When people, it's good for players to have that experience with you. Once they finally have it, you're better established. And then when players know uh, that their characters can die for real, that's when all you got to do is say something minor, like you're walking down the road and around the corner you see a shadow. All you got to say in a game where players know they're fucking for real on the edge because they can really lose a character. Okay, that shadow's an issue. Now they're worried. If there's any fair going on, it's happening. The thing that scares me most is knowing something is out there and wants to kill me. I don't know where it is. And that's right, Philo. As long as you're in a game where you really feel like that game master, it's not that he purposely looks to kill the character. That's not the intent. Just you know, if there is a threat, and that's a threat, and that guy's game, that is a threat, right? You know your character can die. So it's establishing that mindset and that seriousness with your players. And then once you establish that, then it's simple stuff. It's the shadow around the corner could be the thing that ends your character. The shadow around the corner could be the thing that does the total party kill. Right? And it's random. You don't know what's coming. So of course, I don't want to turn a game into a meat grinder or anything like that. That's not my aim in any game. But I will make sure that, hey, if you make mistakes, if the thing is going to be played out, there's no fudging anything. There's no holding back. That's why I roll dice in front of players. It's because I don't want to purposely even try to end your character. There's no. It's not me versus you. I don't see it that way ever in any game. So I'm not trying to end you. That's why I roll in front of you. But I'm not trying to protect you either. It's just that I will let the shit happen, right? It can work. Yep. And when it's established that that game master has allowed that to be played out the proper way, Yeah, yeah, of course. That can be brutal because that could be your character. That could be your character. And it's horrifying to have to see someone lose their character in a lot of circumstances, especially when it's not a meat grinder. See, if you're just pissed off at the game master because you feel the game has fucked over the character in the wrong way, like in a cheating way, or you feel like there's some intent aim from the game master towards ending that character on purpose, you can go from scared to pissed off and annoyed. I've seen that happen with players where they're instead of getting scared, they're annoyed with the game. They're annoyed with how the game master has handled the game, right? So it got to be a trusted game master who has simply, without holding back at all, has simply allowed the game in the most brutal way to properly play out. No fudging, no protecting. That's why I roll dice in front of players, and it's just allowed to happen. And you walk away from that not feeling like the game hasn't screwed you. You know the game master isn't trying to end your character. A game master like me wants to see you succeed. I'll make sure you know that and feel it. Uh, but at the same time, I want you to. I will let the brutality play. It's a mind thing. It is. There's a balance there, and if you get it right, you can scare them with the most basic shit, and not even purposely try to scare them. Well, that's lucky. There's some players I know that could say that they've had a lot of good game masters that do exactly that. But there's a reason, Philo. Uh, there's shitloads of horror stories out there, and maybe you just lack experience in looking at the dialogue and conversation. That's you got to look around a bit more, kiddo. Uh, but I've seen it plenty of times. I started online, especially not just in person. I heard it in person, but when I got online, especially with the forums, uh, the amount of horror stories from players where the game has treated them, the game master has treated them, uh, shitloads of them, like a surreal amount. And those stories don't come out of nowhere, and they're repeated by people that don't even know each other with similar experiences. It's not going to be when you get thousands and thousands of these. People aren't just going to make them up for no reason. In some cases, they might, but you can't say everyone's going to be that. And I've seen it. I've seen it in person where we're at a big gathering where I watch a game master. I was like, dude, because if you know old school D&D, and you got to know old school D&D, you know a lot of old school DMs, especially the AD&D one. You guys viewed the game as them versus the players, and they get to the point where they'd actually they'd screw the players. They keep the enemy alive. Like that guy should have been taken down, but no, they'll keep him alive. And then that guy turns around, total party kills them, and the players all know this happened. They know that guy should be down. They know they've just lost all their characters to this villain who should have been easily taken out. But are you a lucky guy? Of course you are. And there's some people out there like you feel it. So I get you, and that's a wonderful thing to know that you've had a good list of game masters that have properly played this out for you. That's great, but I just want you to know that there is. It's sad that it is the case, and I've seen it personally. Where if you go back when I started in '87, going like to '88, I'd watch guys like do this, like literally tried to kill the characters on purpose. Like I watch them and brag about it, dude. Not just they see if you go back to the real old school back in the '80s, a lot of guys thought it was acceptable. When I'm talking, they thought not just that you hear a horror story, the game master would brag to you, but like I took down the players, and the players knew this was the case. They knew they were targeted, and they did not like almost in every experience they did not like it. They felt targeted. They felt like they had their characters taken out unfairly. Uh, some cases you get these weaker game masters that would actually fudge in the favor of players. But when you found the game master who would fudge in the favor of the villain, it was a sad story, and that kills it, right? So it's lucky you, and I bet you know what I mean. Then you're talking about when you're scared. Well, I bet you're more relating with me than anything, as you're saying you've had game masters out there where you feel like man, that guy lets it play out fairly. But that is, he's establishing with you what I'm talking about, which is once you know that that game master is not going to cheat you, that he let that thing play out, that puts you on an edge. Because now your game master can say shadow around the corner, and you're like, it doesn't mean you're outright scared right away, but there is a seriousness. There is something you don't take as a joke no more. Like there's a shadow around the corner. Well, I better fucking pay attention to that thing. Right? That's right away going to put you on a mental edge. It's good. That's good. It's an edge that you want to be on. It's intense. It's great. Some of the best horror stuff I've encountered was running. I remember some of the most horrific stuff I've done with players is in a zombie game I created. I created a zombie game using some of what you would call my testing of my Neo TTRPG System rules. So I made a sort of fun zombie game because everybody wanted to play zombie. I didn't want to do what the games that were already out there doing. I knew I could just game master it and use a basic set of rules. These are players I already established that with. And then here's the most horrifying part of it. It's not the jump scare part. What freaked players out was the fact that I go into the imagination, I go into the miniature thing, and whenever they finally get caught by a zombie or zombies, they have to go through the process of the character's alive and he's going to be eaten alive. And what horrified my players is, and this is why some of the guys just they couldn't play no more. I go step by step of what's happening as they're being eaten alive. Now I'm already inside their head. I already got the imagination running for them. So imagine they were like, oh, like it's the last thing they want. They've avoided this part like everybody does, especially after the first guy ran into it. He's like, I wonder how this is going to play out. And then when he went through it, he was pale. Because it's like my players all knew like Steven's really good at getting inside of our heads and making us think about this shit. It's like as soon as I got there, he's like, he knew it was over, but he knew he had to go through it. And it horrified him. And every player after that, every time they get to it, it was a panic. I had one female player screech. She screeched in the middle of it, like screech, and then had to go outside and cry for real, like deeply real. And this is a person who's not like somebody with a mental issue. It's just I was so inside of her head going on. And this was part of the torture I put people through, but it was scary. And after these things would happen, every time they seen a zombie, they were scared. They'd be ready to attack it. They tried to build their confidence up, but man, if there was an edge where they could like be bitten, you should see the fear of the players. It was awesome. It was like if you're trying to scare people. If you ask those players, were they afraid? Every single one of them. And these are guys that are hard to scare. All said, yeah, in that game there was no problem. So that's always my advice to people. And it's like the game doesn't guarantee. Like when I hear about a game that's scary, I'm like, well, it's like this is a scary game and does this. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. I think the things me and you just talked about, Philo, are the things that are required to make that shit scary. Right? So performance of a game master is the most necessary part of creating fear in the minds of players. It's performance. And everything else to that is secondary because I can take you in the most basic situation after I've established something, give you the most basic shit, and have players more on the edge than some game where that's not established and you're trying to do jump scares. And it's just like, they'll be like, okay, well, that's a little freaky, but it's like my players are like, there's a shadow around the corner. Like there's an uncomfortable like breathing and sighing and like there is a real what the fuck is going to happen now. I love that. I love digging in. I love digging into people. Minds, get the minds going. Cool. So let's talk about a bit of this stuff I wrote down for Matt Colville. I hope what I'm saying is semi entertaining here. I hope it is. I've said this stuff before, so I hope it's not just repeated blah blah to people. I'd be disappointed if that was the case. I don't see Coochie talk about it. In case he does, I'll keep that up. So Matt Colville did a video recently where one of the things he talked about is a tradition of people not purchasing stuff in the tabletop role-playing game hobby. And he doesn't just say old school. He's a very neutral speaker. I'm going to assume stuff. He's welcome to correct me. I'm not going to quote him as if he said this. I'm not saying for sure he said this, but at least he hints at it. Cool Coochie is he hints at this. He says, if you go back to the old school, or sort of hints at that, but he says, not just them. He says it's a tradition that starts back in the 70s and leads up to now. So he does say back in the 70s, so he's talking about the old school. But he talks about people in the hobby, certain side of the hobby, especially the old school, that really have the side of them that are really opposed to purchasing much in the hobby at all. Like they're not big purchasers, or they don't purchase stuff. And that, to a certain degree, some just don't purchase anything at all. Right. And it's the way he paints it is they don't purchase as if they don't want to, or they wouldn't. This is what he's saying. And he's saying, if you look at game shops, many of the game shops that knew these guys that would come in and game, like unlike Warhammer or Magic Gathering people, which purchase a lot of goods at your store, which helps your store. It's very financially beneficial. He said a lot of role players, especially people in the D&D world, is what he's hinting at, are going into a game shop, for example, to game without buying much. Like really stingy people is what he's saying there. Like initially he's not wrong, but he starts painting at some of the people as being absolute on their lack of purchasing. I'm like, okay, this is where I know he's wrong. And he's not wrong in some of the details. I want to clarify this. Did the old school have a problem with purchasing stuff? And is that part of why TSR went out of business? Absolutely. 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 The old school customer base, and I've talked about this in detail, damaged TSR, the company, like trying to be a bigger company. They damaged them because it's not that the old school won't purchase. But see, there's a small percentage of hobbyists in the hobby that play a variety of games, like myself. And then there's a vast amount of people that play a few games, right? But then the vast majority, especially back in the old school, played like mostly one or two, or that of just TSR D&D. And they establish certain things and certain requirements, like practices. DMs do a lot of the purchasing, right? Or a player might purchase a player's handbook, and there's a lot of sharing it around. So there is a lack of major purchasing on certain things, right? It was believed, but that wasn't the case. Plenty of players bought players' handbooks. Look, most of the time, it's either the game master bought both the Dungeon Master Guide and the Player's Handbook, or a player would buy the Player's Handbook, and the Dungeon Master Guide would also, or Dungeon Master would also have a Player's Handbook, the DMG, or the Monster Manual, right? But so that's the majority of the time. Yes, they were very limited on spending, very limited, very picky. And it wasn't that they wouldn't spend more money or get more books. It's just, this is the complicated part of understanding why they weren't. They were picky customers that once they got established into something, if you're to make a product, you have to make products that completely cater to their needs. And so if you want players to buy player handbooks or buy additional player stuff, you have to not give something so new. You have to be able to play into them the right way. You got to be careful with pricing. and they weren't. There was just a lot of what you would call on the business front. If you compare it to other markets, it seems like okay practice. But to a nerd old school audience, it wasn't that they wouldn't buy products. They were just extremely picky about what they would buy. Right. Modules and other sales for other things prove this. There's lots of sales. When we get to the OSR today, there's certain games that can bring in a lot of money on the Kickstarter. I mean, look at Deathbringer, right? And this is from the crowd of people that Matt Colville is saying don't spend money, that are giving this kind of money over. So it's not that the crowd doesn't give any money, but they become extremely, extremely picky. And this is what TSR had to learn. Like, you want to stretch your wings? Nope, they don't want to. Cater to what they have. Cater to them. Cater to what they like. Only that, period. And if you don't cater, if you don't overkill cater to that, right, you're going to be in a lot of trouble with that crowd. Like, it's an extreme amount of catering that is necessary to them. And so everything you bring out has to be to that. Like, the modules became a better selling price, or a better selling point to that crowd. Why do modules work so well when you say they don't purchase stuff? It's because modules lean into what they like say the module for the AD&D 1E game. So they would sell well. The stores would sell modules all the time, right? Were they frequently coming out? No. That's a setting of expectation. You set an expectation that anybody can purchase, and this is what's going to go down. Then you got to remember that initially the hobby is not made for a lot of people either, right? It's not meant to be something that overkill supports a company or a business. So the idea that the shop is going to depend on the money from the RPG guys in the same way, boom. But were they right to say, hey, they come into the shop, they barely buy anything. And if you're going to come into the shop and use it, you got to be spending money there, right? So were they stingy? Yes. But were they completely hold their money back? That's not true. It's just that you, like, basically, say TSR has 50% of its products are different games, different ideas, different concepts, something stretching their wings, different settings. A lot of that's not going to be purchased. Why? Because it's not catering to the group. It's not catering to very specific things within what they're doing. It's asking them to be open-minded when you get an audience of customers that aren't open-minded. That's the problem with the TSR. The majority of people buying TSR stuff, the truth is they were not open-minded. They buy stuff, but it had to cater to exactly what they're doing. Right. And TSR tried to experiment because they want to grow. So imagine you want to grow the customer base for TSR. Right. And obviously, whatever they're doing is only getting who they got so far. So they establish that group. So if you want to get new people, you got to do different things, right? Problem is, your established group will not also purchase most of those other things. And TSR was committed itself, and shops in that will commit themselves to these other things. If a shop only really overly catered to certain things, I had to do AD&D 1E, and there were tons of modules and extra books and ways of making the game better specifically for them. Could you have gotten them to spend more money at your shop? Yes, that potentially can happen, but it has to be catered to them. When they share a zone, there's only so many people going to be gaming in the hobby as it is, and the products are not required. So it's like you gotta, and Magic Gathering, more people need to buy cards to be able to have the experience you want, right? So in D&D, you only need to get maybe one book to share, like with players. You only need to get one monster manual. You need to get one Dungeon Master guide. You don't need 50 sets of dice. So it's what do you need for the experience? That was the bad marketing. The customers are reacting exactly how you would expect them to react. They're really reacting no different than the Warhammer guys or the Wargamer guys. Wargamer guys, for them to have the experience they want and be catered, there's a variety of things they got to purchase, right? So you need to make it. There should have been a better. It was bad marketing by TSR. They build a majority and then basically make it that they can game on very little. And it's not a principle not wanting to spend. It's just why spend. Here's the principle: why spend more than you need to? And then the overcharging of books too. So you're going to a customer base where most of the people at the time don't have lots and lots of money to be able to just always pour. And you're talking to kids too. A lot of gamers are young. Like it's not that they don't. The player's handbook comes with it. Say it's $50 per book. Most of the young guys would gather their money up to buy one. So it's you can't pretend young people have more money than they do at the time either. When you're looking at the history, completely different. So what do you need for the experience? Wargaming, you need to buy a lot of things for the experience you want. Magic Gathering, you need to buy a lot of things for the experience you want. If the people playing TTRPGs, especially D&D, needed to buy more things for the experience they want, they would. They would have gathered up more money. They would have spent more. Were they stingy going to stores? Well, let's look. War gamers were mostly older people, even back at the time. They have way more money to dish out on products at the time in these stores. You go back to Magic the Gathering people. Oh, I mean, if you were poor, a lot of people didn't even take part in it. So your customer base are going to be from middle class, higher end families with money. Very few people were what you would call high spenders in the way that we would like to think. It's they have money, but we don't get all the high type of spenders in the D&D world, the tabletop role-playing game world. And by the time you leave the shops, by the time things change, of course, people are making more money and the hobby changes. But where does the practice come being tight? It's not they're not spending no money or refuse or have a principle of not spending money. It's just you don't need more for your experience. Were they always stingy? Like he says in the video, they would go there. Wouldn't even buy this. Oh man, I was at game shops where people would go play D&D and buy all kinds of things, like buy snacks, buy. He said they wouldn't even buy the pencils for the game. Okay, poor Matt Colville. I know he's trying to make a point, but he'd have to prove that is a widespread issue. I knew lots of people that did it at the gaming shops or public places, brought their own gear. No problem, right? But then you got to look at the younger crowd too. Sometimes it would be when you got to look at the age of the people he's talking about. I'm like, Matt, you know, a lot of the cases you're talking about 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds. Yeah, some guys showed up without stuff from poor families. Some had money, and the guys that would have the money would usually provide. But would the game shop always have the pencils and that? Well, the game shops were, how can I say, back in the day, they pride themselves to be nice to people. Like, is that a complaint that the game shop might have pencils for the poor kid playing the game? Are you hating on the poor kid? Isn't it a cool, nice thing that the game shop owner, because I got some pencils for you guys so you can play. They don't do a lot of purchasing. He says, all right, well, you know, you keep the store busy. You guys can use the table in the back tonight. We grew up at a time where people were cool, where money wasn't as tight as it is now. And we can call that, you can paint that whatever way you want, but I don't paint that as a bad thing. Go back in the old school, were the shop owners unhappy? No. And if they were, they wouldn't let these kids come in and play. A lot of kids were poor, didn't have money for certain things. They give them the pencils if they didn't have the shit. Hey, you're not spending a lot of money here. It's okay. You can go back and use the table anyway. I know you guys come here to game. And they would. They'd have nowhere else to go to game. But it's, if you try to paint that as a negative thing, you miss the positive part of that. That is the shop owner being good, right? When they could afford to do this at the time. They let them go play. It's not going to hurt the shop to let them play at the back, right? If not everybody's using every table, go ahead, guys. And of course, if the spending customers were taking up most of the room at a shop, yeah, of course they wouldn't make room for the guys not spending money. All right, kids, you can't play here tonight. They got a big tournament over there. That's how it was. So the way he paints it up in his video is to make that sound like a bad thing. That poor kids that couldn't afford pencils, that would get pencils from the shop, he makes it sound like they're cheap. It's like, no, Matt Colville, they weren't cheap. They were fucking poor. And you should be a bit more humble when you judge people. It's nice that you got money, kiddo, right? It's nice that you maybe grew up in a situation better off than a lot of people did. I'm not hating on you here, but I'm calling you out on this one. What you don't know is it wasn't stingy kids. It was kids with no money to do anything. I was poor when I entered the hobby. So let's be real. Middle class, higher middle class kids played Magic the Gathering because it was an expensive hobby. War gaming was done by a lot of adults because it was an expensive hobby. Glad they had the income to be able to help shops out. Most of the guys doing D&D, there'd be the odd ones with some money. And that might be the DM. That might be the guy who's showing up, the older guy DMing or whatever. He has a job, he has some money. But he's done his purchasing. He's gotten the books. He's gotten the dice. He's gotten the thing. And if by chance, he's probably bought the books at the shop where they're gaming. Probably even buys the modules when he can afford it. But the shop owner isn't asking these guys to pass over the same amount of money that the Magic the Gathering guys or the wargaming guys are. So, Matt Colville, I have to call your video out here because it's I get what you're trying to say, but it's very shallow, very, very shallow view of reality of what happened at the game shops. So you're talking about people being nice to poor people as if the poor people were being stingy. And shop owners would, oh yeah, they totally get what you're saying. Like, yeah, these guys were stingy. No, that's not how shop. I talked to plenty of shop owners that own these gaming shops. They knew the kids going in there had no fucking money to be able to do anything. So let's be real. Okay, there, had to correct you on that one. That's the reality. And so when these young people got money and they're catered to as they get older, do they buy stuff? The OSR has had lots of sales. From the same crowd, you say spends no money at all. Shadow Dark. Plenty of OSR games spread across purchasing power. Modules purchased. Tons of them. Tons of them. And some games did. The odd games would get some love from these guys when it really appealed to them, which wasn't a lot outside of what they did. And were they more picky? Well, yeah, when most of the people taking part in the hobby don't have a lot of money because most of them are young. Yeah, because they don't have a ton of money. They're not just picky out of principle. They're picky because they can't afford most of this stuff. It's imagine you're trying to market to people that can't afford a lot of things. That's what's happening. You're pretending there's a purchasing power that doesn't exactly exist. And here you are comparing the high middle end kids that were playing from middle class families that had money playing Magic the Gathering. There's no way. That's the reason D&D appealed to a lot of poor kids. It's because they could afford to play it. Like you didn't have to spend a lot, or the game master might have the one books, and you poor kids could play. The poor kids couldn't play wargaming. The poor kids couldn't play Magic the Gathering. They could play D&D though. So that's why you get a lot of stories of people that have had a really tough, poor life playing D&D. So get to know your audience a bit better before you call poor people people that are stingy. They're not stingy, Matt Colville. They were poor. There you go. So yes, we have all kinds of hobbies, but very few of them those poor kids could take part in. Of course, they're going to go to D&D. Of course, I get to play a lot of games. I get lucky because a lot of old guys that I met that weren't the wealthiest guys, they buy their D&D books, but they might buy, like one guy buys Bushido. I met a lot of old guys when I came in 1987, between that and to 1991. And they would have games like Bushido. They'd have all these different games, but it wouldn't be like one guy had all the games. They'd each have like these different games. And I would get them and then go print them. And I couldn't afford hardcovers because I was poor. I could barely scrape the money together for printing most of the time, right? But I would. I get books printed. I didn't have hardcover, nothing, and I would go through the really hard work of printing every page. People are like, you know what you got to do to print? Yeah, that's what I had to do. And then I'd have the book printed. Then I could run the game. I could run Bushido. Right? I could run Traveler. That's what I did. So there you go. There you go. Just wanted to clear the air on the spending issue. No, our part of the hobby are not really truly stingy people. To say so is a lie. To even push that idea is a lie. Okay. First detail down. So here's another reason a lot of people get stuck with old school D&D. Because it's generic and you can do just about anything you want with it. That's what most people discover. They think they'll be told D&D is this miniature game with terrain and it's wargaming. It's like, no. What you're getting is you're getting a certain section of people that talk about D&D in this way because they can play it that way. Now, some of these guys aren't really old school because miniatures don't become a major thing at this level until some small group in the 90s starts pushing, making their own plastic, but it's not mainstream. Mainstream plastic and common miniature use doesn't happen until Wizards of the Coast. So that's just guys trying to falsely paint the history of our hobby. Most DMs, most games are pure theater of the mind and combat. Most, right? In the early years, in the real old school era. So, because they could not afford the miniatures. And some of the experimenting of making plastic and that doesn't really happen until the 90s. It's not a big thing. You have some more gamers crossover. Most people are doing pure theater of the mind because it's minimal. You only have what you can afford, right? And that was another great smart move by Gary. Making the hobby that was for poor people is making it that you don't create a barrier. He understood to make miniatures optional for the guys that could afford it. But if you make them mandatory, it creates a barrier. So what's default play if you don't do miniatures? There's not three ways to play the game. Especially when it comes to combat. There's not three ways. It's either use miniatures or you do it with pure theater of the mind. So that means if miniatures are optional, it means the core default gameplay, the mandatory gameplay, especially if you didn't have the miniatures, mandatory gameplay is pure theater of the mind. Most DMs did pure theater of the mind. So when you get back to D&D, what was it? It's whatever you wanted it to be. And here's how Gary put it. They talk about Raw. Raw didn't become important to D&D until tournament and modules. Tournament with AD&D 1E. Before that, Raw is not a thing. Even during the AD&D 1E, Raw at the home game is not a thing. Here's what Gary Gygax really pushed. He thought all DMs should learn how to run the game through the Raw process, rules as written. Once you know how, once you get experience, once you become a master of the rules, he doesn't just expect you to make a change. He thinks it's a requirement. You are going to tweak, and not just take the optional rules. He's like talking about tweaking the actual core rules they have. But because the designers and the staff could do this, and he knew you at home, once you mastered the game, it's not like the staff is like some godly people. If they're capable of tweaking a rule, like say the battle metric and Thaco to Thaco for second edition, if they're capable of doing that and the game keeps working, he knows you at home are capable of doing it. His staff are no more better than you. These are not gods. These are not like somebody that's supernatural above you. He knows when you master, you'll be able to make a change. Good. What, Miles? Do you think I'm going to tell you it's going bad? I'm joking. Anyway, so when it comes to Raw doesn't become a thing in AD&D 1E tournament and module, and it's dropped as quick as it appears. Right? Raw is not a staying point. Gary makes that clear. Once you become a master, he doesn't just expect you to use the options in AD&D 1E. He expects that you'll actually tweak the core rules. And that's fine. He doesn't say D&D is this. He says, to him, he'll say, if you ask him, this is the way he would put it. To him, this is what AD&D is. But he'd also say at other times, Dungeons and Dragons, he'd look at it like a toolkit, the way he would communicate it. It is whatever you want it to be. That's the poetic side of D&D. And it's whatever you want it to be. It's whatever way you want to play. You want to play pure theater of the mind and do more social interaction in the city and do a city campaign? Do that. That's D&D. It's what did D&D inspire? It's not what D&D is. It's helping you reach what you want. It's not about you bowing to the game book. It's about the book helping you achieve what you want. And whatever you did with it, that is your game. That is your Dungeons and Dragons game. That is D&D. And to say, this is D&D by the book didn't matter. By the book was just a learning process. You don't marry it. You just learn. Master the rules so you can understand what it is just to be someone who can run the game, understand the game, get what you want. But it's all about getting what you want. That's all D&D is there for. It's a generic thing. It's generic enough to be plain enough that if they're doing something in World of Darkness, you can do it with D&D. Savage Worlds is another game that is quite popular now for very similar reason. The Savage World rule set, because it's a type of rule set where you can pretty much take whatever idea you want and put it on top of it. D&D is a very similar thing. That's why it's so popular, because and even Matt Colville points this out in this video. Well, you got this group playing AD&D 1E this way, and they play another group plays it differently. That's the grand part of D&D. D&D is not meant to be one thing. So when you hear people out there going, "This is D&D," fuck them. That's not what Gary said, and I'm talking about the core designer. So you're snibbling a fucking side opinion of some fucking customer from the side having this is D. You can go fuck yourself. Gary didn't support that. I never heard the fucking designer support that. So some snibbling fucking opinion you have on the side, you can stick that up your ass. D&D is whatever it was to you. That's it. It's not what D&D is to everyone. It's what it is to you. D&D is personal. Gaming is personal. Now, we get the wisdom of this. We understand it. And D&D is meant to help you reach your personal experience that you want. Whatever that is Dungeons and Dragons. Now, if you get away from the game doing that for you, if you get away where it's so, because rules is written, the pure focus here's how I'll put it. In the Dungeon Master Guide for AD&D 1E, Gary says the DM is king. When it comes to rules as written, the book is king. The book is king. The book is king. It contradicts that statement. Either the DM is king, and that means he overrules the book, and I mean in every way, or the book overrules the DM. If the book overrules the DM, the book is king. You can't have it both ways. A king, the term king, is absolute. Is absolute. Now in second edition, the DM is king. In Beckme, the DM is king. In original Dungeons & Dragons, the DM is king. In AD&D 1E at home, away from the tournament play, the Dungeon Master is king. Raw was for shared world tournament play. That was it. It was to sell the game, give an experience in a unique setting. Why did they have, it was the first time rules is written becomes a major thing, so everyone can have the same experience of the same game in the tournament. If you took that home, you were confused. And why would it be like that at the tournament? Well, for the tournament to hold up, you need to be able to take any Tom, Dick, or Harry that walks through the door, and he needs to be able to run the game, right? So if you had nobody that had any skill for DMing at all, wasn't even a real dungeon master, they could run the game by the book. They, to me, they don't qualify as real dungeon masters. They're just people playing the role of a DM. That's what rules as written is. People playing the role of a dungeon master. Not the actual thing. Somebody playing the role of the real. I'm a dungeon master. The guy, AD&D 1E tournament guy at the shop running it by the book. His name is Phil. Phil is pretending to be me, but Phil's not me. I'm a real dungeon master. Phil is just some guy letting the book be king. Not a real dungeon master. And do I care about that? Of course I do. Of course. I'm a nerd. It's like somebody liking sports. You're passionate about your team. We're allowed to choose what we want to be passionate about. Right? This mattered to me. So I think it's a skilled thing. I don't want the role of the person running the game to be put down, to be degraded, to have some mediocre person who knows nothing about what they're doing be able to sit at the fucking same table as me. No, you can't. No, you can't, Phil. Thanks for filling in for a second. Now get fucking moving. That's rules as written. That is not a real principle of Dungeons and Dragons TSR. DM is king. That's why our rule lawyers in OD&D were cool. They have knowledge. They tell the DM, this is what it says in the book. The DM says, well, I perceive it different, or I'm just doing something different. Rule lawyer, okay, cool. That's it. Beckme, same relationship. Second edition, AD&D, same relationship. It's not until you get to AD&D 1E where many of the guys, many of the players, many were confused that it was rules as written. A rule lawyer, the first time you hear about these asshole rule lawyers, it's AD&D 1E. And when they would get after their DM, well, it says this in the book. Well, I perceive it. No, that's not what it says, though. And they'd argue. Want to know why the player would argue with an AD&D 1E DM? Because the player is misguided to think the book is king. 5E, the book is king. 4E, the book is king. 3E, the book is king. I remember when they used to tell me 3E and all of this was made off of second edition. I was like, nope, 3E, 4E, 5E is all made off the tournament style of AD&D 1E. Raw rules as written with pre-made adventures. And that's another thing they changed. It pisses me off to this day. I don't hate people that like modules. I don't hate modules. I want to be very clear because a lot of people misunderstand this. You know, like a module, and they identify with them. They're nostalgia for them, and they take it as an attack. It's not an attack, my friends. It's not. It's just, here's the truth. This remains true even if you like it. And it's not a point that should be ignored even if you like it. That's why I don't like having a conversation with someone who talks about these things and always dismiss this fact. Right? We had sandboxing. This is a wargaming mindset that comes in with OD&D. You'll see it with a Traveler as well. Sandbox is complete freedom. Understand the rules, that's the structure, and then complete freedom for the player, right? Players guide the game. It's a wargaming mindset. Sandbox, not the redefined version from the module. That's bullshit. Freedom within a loose is still it's a loose railroad. It's not sandbox. It's a Temple of Elemental Evil railroad, loose railroad, but a railroad. Nope, don't. It's a railroad with some sand. No, it's not some sandboxing. Sandboxing is absolute, complete freedom. Right. So if it's not there, it's a loose railroad. You either got a hard railroad or a loose railroad. Right. That's it. And so when you get to sandboxing, you build the adventure based on what the players do, and you build great adventures because it's all tailored to the players and what they want in their characters. It's always going to be fun. It's always going to be grand. AD&D people loved it. BECME people did sandboxing, loved it. All catered to the players and their characters. The adventure built around their actions, their decisions. Adventures were great. And Traveler, you go to Traveler. Traveler does the same thing. It's all focused on the player characters. You don't need a third-party adventure. You don't need somebody to pre-make an adventure for you. Right? That's sandboxing. When modules came out, they were made mostly for ideas of you getting the idea of a game, giving you some samples of what the game is. That leads into tournament being a big thing with modules, with adventures. They were so popular and they sold well. And imagine you got a customer base, which we already talked about, which is, it's hard up. They're very picky because they don't get a lot of money. But surprisingly, they would buy the modules. TSR as a company leans into it, wants to sell a bunch of them. At one point, you start realizing the idea of sandbox gaming is a complete threat to the settings are selling somewhat okay, some of the settings. Modules are selling, but in sandbox, you can develop your own setting through a sandbox. Mystera is a great setting built off by the staff, built off by people that were gaming, right? These were ideas developed and then developed through gaming. Sandboxing, build. That's a sandbox setting, right? You could build your own setting through adventuring and building the setting at the same time. You never had to purchase anything. And the setting you would, I guarantee, create for whatever you're doing would be catered to you and your players. It would be fine. It'd be everything you want it to be. Now imagine TSR comes up with a new market scheme and they're selling you settings and pre-made adventures. Well, what's a major threat to those sales? Real sandbox gaming. Real sandbox gaming gives you adventures. You don't need to buy the modules. Real sandbox gaming lets you develop your own setting. You don't got to buy theirs. So what do? They redefine sandbox. They lie about what it is. They try to pretend that a loose railroad, somehow is sandboxing. It's not. It's just a loose railroad. It's a redefining of what sandbox really means. Right? Because sandbox becomes a threat to the model. And it's a money grab. They don't expect people to be buying the stuff. They expect you to be sandboxing, developing your own adventures in your own setting. And that was exciting stuff. And it wasn't because we were opposed to a market. Not about hating a market. All right, you have a good night, Philo. Thank you for joining in, my friend. I appreciate your time. But yes, that I hate to repeat this stuff, but it's a response to Matt Colville, because he said a lot of things where it's like, why did guys hold back on money? It's because sandbox adventuring and setting stuff was actually great. It's like, Matt, I know the market needs money, but the setting you would make with your friends is an exciting thing. To not be able to do that, to have people speak against that as if go spend money on somebody else's pre-made setting instead of making your own. It's just no, dude. I don't want that art lost, because that is a beautiful thing. I want people to know that you don't need to go buy the modules, the third-party adventures. Now, do I hate modules? Look. I don't hate you as some fellow person in the hobby that plays D&D that likes modules. I don't think Keep on the Borderlands is a poorly written idea for an adventure. It's not an attack. So if you misunderstand my take on this as an attack, it's all going over your head. I'm just telling you the truth. You can like it, but it doesn't mean what I'm saying is not true. And it's bad to ignore this reality. You could still like Keep on the Borderland and still accept that yes, what TSR was doing with the modules was a money grab and was an attempt to replace you developing your own adventures at home, which were exciting and amazing. I mean, they got people today. There's old school. This is how caved in. I grew up with great dungeon masters that were amazing, that could do pure theater of the mind combat at the highest scale. Fucking skilled. Some of the most talented guys I've ever met in a hobby in my life. Now you can watch panels of guys talking about D&D where they say you can't do combat without miniatures. What a level of ignorance of history. Like, I came in when like 80% of guys were doing pure theater of the mind and could like breathing air. And I have to hear panels of guys now that call themselves old school D&D people. What a fucking disgrace they are to go on a fucking panel and pretend that we can't do combat in pure theater of the mind. You need miniatures. You can't really. Fuck you, you fucking lying pricks. The 80% of the fucking DMs did it, and they fucking were super fucking talented and pulled it off all the time. And I'm sorry if some of you guys out there, it's not hating on you, but it's just telling the truth. You got to be humble. If you're not capable of doing it, instead of having this giant ego that says if you can't do it, others can't, calm the fuck down. Be a bit more humble. Understand how many talented people we had in the old school that did it like it was breathing fucking air. It's a disgrace. It's a rewriting of history. It's a complete false history to say, oh, we need miniatures. Well, how the fuck did the hobby get by for decades without them being used by the majority? Majority doing pure theater of the mind. How did we get by in TSR with D&D if people weren't using them? And they weren't. Philo's a great guy. I love Philo. Cyberpunk guy. So is Zeg. I remember you guys. See, Zeg and Philo met me on my Cyberpunk coverage. That's how I drew those guys in. I had this thing for Norway people. That's Black Rose and Philo are both Norway folks. I love those guys. But there you go. There's my passion, guys. Now, some of you Black Rose, you've heard me say this stuff before, but it is a direct response to some people around a certain thing. A lot of people take my critique of what modules were as an attack on them or an attack on what they enjoyed. I have no problem. I played Temple of Elemental Evil and I covered it to say I enjoyed it. So if I really am opposed to modules in the way people assume, why would I cover the Temple of Elemental Evil and talk in positive ways about it? I did that with the intent to communicate to people out there that act, that respond to what I say is if it's an attack on their modules and what they like. If that is the case, why did I do a stream being pro module with Temple of Elemental Evil? Zeg. Oh, Zeg, just to let you know, I put the pitch up for the game. Sadly, we never got the other person signed up, but hey, maybe we'll get somebody between the week here. That's 3 people. I haven't seen Fox back either. So we get something like these. Part of being online, dude. I look forward to it happening. We only got to get one more person and we go. I'm looking forward to it. Right. But yeah, There you go, my friend. There you go. Just being real with you. But yeah, it's a lot of people take my critique, like my honest truth about modules and the fact that they were a money grab, and many of the settings were a money grab from TSR, and they take it as an attack, and because they have a simple-minded view about what they assume I mean by something. They just react like I'm attacking. So I try to give nuance and complexity by going, why would I be positive about this if I really hated them? Yeah, just being real with you, man. It's disappointing for me too, right? And look, just like I don't get this ego. It's like, look, I have two groups in person, and of course, I get a gaming fix in. But I said to myself, I can't stub my nose at you or the gaming on here. I take it serious. So it's like, yes, I feel bad. I have no control over these things. We at one point, I think we had a poor Bill. I think Bill would play if he didn't have to adjust to work. Fox just never returned, and that and Fox might be one of those old school guys that just heard me say something later in the content that he doesn't agree with, and you know how sensitive and insecure some people can be. They hear one thing, they're gone, right? So it's a sad shame that they're like that, but that happens. And then there's the other guy, and the other guy he's had a long time now to comfortably, and he's had time. He's been around. He's had plenty of time to get a character done. It doesn't take that long. Just decided not to do it, and then comes to me at last minute when you know my rules vague. I've repeated them, drilled them. I will not take the character on the day, and it's been each week. He waits right to the day, starts hinting he wants to make the nope. He did it last Monday, and nope. Maybe through this week he'll decide to take the plunge in and make the thing, right? But he has to do that on his own. It's one of these things. It has to show me there's not a red flag there, right? Land would be a bigger problem. But there you guys go. All right, let me update the schedule for streams. Let me give you guys some details that I think you'll be happy with. So streams coming up. Okay. August 1st. Ars Magica. Now, every Tuesday is still off script, so I'm not going to keep mentioning off script. First one for August is August 4th, off script. On August 8th, I'll be covering Marvel Superheroes. On August 15th, I'll be covering the Morrow Project. Great game. Now, the first of two, because I am doing two, the first members only stream of August will be August 19th, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. On August 22nd, I'll be covering, this is not members only, Immortal, the Invisible War. Then, my second members only stream will be on August 26th. I'll be covering Most Scared role-playing game, the role-playing game. So that new to me anyway. The last stream of the month will be on August 29th, and I'll be covering the game Over the Edge. Seafaring people. We'd love to see more Scandinavia. Joe only being once. I hear you guys. So there's the update. So Warhammer Fantasy and Most Guard are the two members only streams I'm doing, and then we're doing like Ars Magica. Let's go over that one more time. Ars Magica, Marvel Superheroes, The Morrow Project, Immortal, The Invisible War, and Over the Edge. Every other stream is just off script. As you guys know the deal. That's how that works. Oh, that sounds appealing. That's August. That is August. Remember, I'm cutting back, so it's going to be Saturdays, Tuesdays, Saturdays. Members only is still going to be on Wednesdays. So when I say members only, I'm talking on a Wednesday. So the streams are now Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. That's it. That's the streams going forward. And if I get a game going, Zag, it's going to be, as you know, Monday nights. So my online activities aside of whatever else I want to do will be Monday, Tuesday, and Saturdays. The other 4 days are for life and work and other things I'm doing for sure. And the 2 Wednesdays I can actually do though. The two I can do 2 Wednesdays every month, but I need the other Wednesdays open for sure. And they'll vary. They can sometimes be earlier or later in the month. I mean, I'll get them, but that will vary. So the only thing I can do is guarantee that the members only are on Wednesday. But what Wednesdays? Like, is it the last two of every month? I would like it to be sort of formatted like that, but I can't outright promise. Sometimes it could be early in the month, right? And even though I have some other games covered now for the members only, I'll be doing this week. I'm doing Warhammer, and then sometime around the weekend or something, I forget next week I think maybe I'll be doing the Most Guard. So I have the guys that are going to run the games and help me with the rundowns, and I'm already learning the games as it is. I don't want to say much. Like, I already know enough that. See, I don't like the idea of doing a review about games that I haven't personally played, like interacted with, but I could, and some people do that out there. I think I understand. It's like 5e. 99% of what I said about 5e before I ran it was correct. I knew it was. I instinctively knew it was. But you want to know what? I was fair to my fellow nerds and went and ran it just to make the point, right? It just had the principle. So with Most Guard and Warhammer Fantasy, I'm starting to learn like a lot about it. I could really talk about these games now. I don't want to. Lore Black Rose is the biggest pain in the fucking ass with Warhammer. Lore, not the game. Game, breathing air. I can fucking tabletop role play you. I know too many games for that to be a difficult thing for me to understand. I know too much. I know too much about tabletop role playing games for. Trust me, I run circles around any Warhammer guy that is trying to do tabletop role playing games with Warhammer Fantasy. Sorry, I'd be real with you. But the lore, holy fuck, dude. Holy fuck. Yeah. Almost thrown it a few times. Bang, bang, bang. Don't worry, I'm not that frequent. My name's not Obama. Oh, there's a joke. There's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. It's a joke. I hope that one was a good one. I hope that was an okay one. I hope that was neutral enough. Nobody takes that personal. I think everyone can find that funny. I don't know. Maybe. Too soon? Too soon. Too soon. Not too soon. There you go. There you go. So I talked about travel at the start of this, and then we went into Matt Colville's recent video. Did I hit on every point that he made? Absolutely not. But there was just some principles I needed to clarify. The difference between being poor and being stingy, and misunderstanding being poor to equal being stingy. And yes, just because some people have money in the hobby, they might have it later in their life. And if they had it back then, trust me, they did their purchases, the modules, the settings, right? But you only purchase what you need to have your experience. That's what Magic the Gathering people did. That's what Warhammer people did. And if you only needed to buy so much to play either one of those games, if it was a limited thing that you needed, they wouldn't have paid as much money as they did. So you got to look at the market. You can't always blame the customer for the outcome of the way people purchased it or approached something. Like, if you make it that I only need one book, why am I buying a book for everyone? See, it's on principle. Then it becomes, do we all need to spend $50, especially at a time when people are tighter for money and many people around you are poor? Higher middle class people, higher middle class kids played Magic the Gathering. That is the truth. We all knew it. We talked about it openly. It was people from middle class families that had money. If you were playing it in your report was a hand-me-down. If you saved up your money, you might be able to take part in it. Some people did. Some people were passionate enough to, even poor, go to their way, but very few. Wargaming, same thing. Let alone it was a barrier. Like the idea of having miniatures was a barrier to the tabletop role-playing game hobby, and it would have been if Gary would have made it that way, which I'm glad he didn't. And there's not a single edition of TSR-era D&D that ever made it mandatory, right? Because he knew it would be a barrier. Because he knew this instinctively. Very wise, very right, very correct. It was just a different type of gamer playing wargaming. Older guys that had jobs, had money, had the extra funds to put out, did it happily. So Matt Colville's video is him. I don't think he meant anything like crude or hateful about it. I just think he ran around a deep circle and missed on some major points that works against what he wants things to be. Like he has an agenda in that video, in his recent video. He wants people to spend money. The last thing we're going to talk about, paid game mastering, which I said I'd mention. Here's the way I feel about paid game mastering. I'll put it simple to you. The idea of paid game mastering was one that was silly to us because, well, first off, most of the hobby when I was younger in the old school was poor. You couldn't afford to pay people. But on principle, is paid GMing bad? Well, look, if we're sandboxing and I'm improvising, I can make up what I want. I can change rules. I can tweak the rules. I can do what I want and you'll accept. Well, then I'm getting you to accept something and I'm going to make what I want. That's a reward for me. You don't pay for that. Right? So the principle of the idea that if I make changes to the game and I get you to accept that I'm making changes, do I think it's right to expect you to pay for that game? No, because now we're all participating with our creativity. It is an activity together. The second you say you want me to run a game by the book for you without me applying what I would want to it. Like the book is going to be king. I run the game for you. I think it's completely fine for a game master who is now going to work it like a job in service to you without being able to apply what they want to it, to, yes, ask for money. And if you're willing to pay, that's completely okay and right. And there's many positives. Players that pay do show up and consistently show up. Game masters are happy to have the experience. It's not always the hottest thing because they can't always add their own ideas to what's going on because you are paying for it. But that's part of it. The game master is giving up their creativity, their ideas. They are giving it up, and they're going to serve you like a job, right? Not their passion, like a job. And that can make it a lot easier, yes, to be able to run a game where you're working it like a job. There's nothing wrong with somebody, if you want somebody's labor to do something in service for you, not for them, because raw means the DM is serving you, not themselves. If the DM is serving you and not themselves, they have the right to demand money. And if you're willing to pay, fair enough. And if they say, look, if you don't, here's what I would say is, if you don't want to pay, I'm going to make a major change here because I want to. What's wrong, man? Well, then pay me. If I can't put my creativity forth, pay me. It's not above average. You just expect what you're paying for. That's it. But it's principle, Miles. I don't give a shit what you think. I'm going to be honest with you. You can shove your opinion up your ass. I'm saying I'm principle. And I'm being kind there. I get what you're saying. It's not above and beyond. It's just, if you want the game master, let me be clear about this. It's not above and beyond. It's just you want them to run, say, a pre-made adventure. You want them to run 5e as it is in the book. What does that mean? The DM cannot put their own creativity in. So I'll tell you, Miles, Don't expect someone to be your fucking slave for free. If you want them to put away their creativity and run the game as it is in the book, and they want money for that, they are in the right to ask for that, and there's nothing wrong with it, is what I'm saying. The second you say that your demand that a DM give up their creativity and serve you, not themselves, only serve you and not their own needs and wants, the second they are in service only to your pleasure, not their own, then they have the right under that to ask for money, and nobody has the right to sit there and say to them, that's wrong. There is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Right? Now, if you say, hey, dude, if you want to change 5e and run your own adventure, I'll play it. If you want to make changes to it, if you want to put your own creativity for it, if that guy says pay me, say fuck you. Nope. Do, because I'm letting you serve your own pleasure here. Like at that point, the DM is being able to put their creativity in, and by you playing, they get to explore what they want in their own pleasure. They shouldn't ask for money for that. That is their way of participating, their way of them getting pleasure. I just answered you, dude. I answered you before you could ask the question. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about guys that, if you look at all the guys, see Miles, yeah, and nobody asked for the sandbox stuff. Everybody does it by module and by the book. So it's Miles, you're bringing up a useless fucking question. I mean, every guy that charges does it, offers by the book, and runs a third-party adventure. So we're not talking about people that do sandbox. Boom, eliminated. And even if they did, you already know what I think. Bullshit, don't ask for money for that. That's your own creativity. And the second a player wants you to serve only their needs, only their pleasures, and fuck you, the DM, and what you want, pay them. Or at least they have the right to ask for a payment, and nobody can say that's wrong. You could say you wouldn't pay, but you can't say on principle they are in the wrong to ask for money. The second you want somebody to enslave themselves to you for your pleasure only, not for their own, that's a job. That's work. That's them giving you their labor. The second you turn DMing into a job, the person willing to work the job has the right to ask for a payment for their labor that they're putting forth. If not, the payoff is not money, their own ideas, their own creativity gets to be put forth, and you agree to it as a player. The second you're willing to play the 5e guy's game who wants to change how combat works. The second he wants to change how magic works, you accept it. Well, fair. That's secret. That's a social contract. You are already paying him off. He's getting to explore his creativity like you are with your character and what you're doing. So the second that is negotiated, there's your payoff. There's no money needs to cross lines. That's your agreement. The second you tell a DM, this is not about you, and it's only about me, the player, only my pleasure, only what I want, only I matter, and you don't. That's a job. That guy has a right, in principle, to ask for money. And you could say you wouldn't pay, but to act righteous, like, oh man, the DM won't enslave himself to us, so fuck him. I want a guy who will enslave himself to us. No, you can't speak righteous about that. You could say you wouldn't pay, but you can't speak righteous about it. Asking someone to enslave their time to you without their pleasure being taken care of, without their creativity, without their wants, that's all put on the back burner. You are no position to righteously speak with a righteous tone to that person, as if you had the right to say, fuck you. I want you to be a slave to me. And since you don't want to, I think you're an asshole since you won't be a slave. I mean, the guy, what the fuck is that all about? Raw is the by the book, not by that guy's creativity. Raw, third party adventure. He's a middleman. It's work. It's not his creativity, not his ideas. He's giving you the book. The book is king. You're getting the book. He's just, for the book to run the game, the book is now using the human being. It's not even his game. The book is like injected into that guy's back, like, right? All he's doing is servicing the book. The book is king. He's servicing the adventure. The adventure is king. And his creativity is forgotten about. He gets no payoff, no pleasure, no creativity, no nothing. It is labor. There is nothing in it for the person running the game. That's it. So if you want, and under principle, that guy could say to you with and he could be righteous to say, hey, I deserve to be paid for this. And guess what? If someone's giving you their labor that way, damn right, they deserve to be paid for it. If that's your demand of them. And if you don't want to pay, Miles or anybody out there, then don't get your head stuck up your fucking ass when it comes to Raw. When a DM comes around to you and says, well, hey, I want to make a change, and you say, man, I don't really want to, pay him. If not, just go ask to negotiate. See if you can meet in the middle. But don't tell him he can't make a change. Because if you don't want to pay, you have to let him explore his creativity the way you are going to explore your own pleasure, because that's his pleasure. So the second you take his pleasure away, that's work. People get paid for work. That's not a hobby, that's a job. So let's be real about that. Let's not bullshit ourselves about that. So to say nobody's out there has the right to ask for money for game mastering, absolute bullshit. Tournament DMs were paid by shops and everything. It makes sense. They are running it raw. Has nothing to do with their pleasure. It is a fucking job. That's it. End of fucking story. So I'm not saying guys are going to. Some guys will volunteer their time, and when you volunteer and you're happy to run the game as is for players, that's not slavery. There's nothing wrong with that, and you're in the right to do so. I think that's completely fine. I don't want to speak as if that's not okay. It's completely okay. But you all, as players, you cannot turn around and say it's offensive if that guy who is doing it by the book, especially if you demand it, for him to say, I want money. You can say, look, I'm not going to pay you. But you can't say that he's wrong to make the request or the demand. You got to look at principle and go, you know what? I mean, you're right. You're working. It's labor. You know, it's not like you don't deserve to be paid for your labor and your time. Because this has nothing to do with your pleasure, your fun. This is not pleasing you. You are only serving other people's pleasure. It's like think about the waiter. The waiter isn't eating at your table. They're bringing your food to you, right? And that's why they get paid. Now, if the waiter was bringing you food but sat down at the table with you like your family, the payment is the social interaction, the hanging out. But get it, at that point, it goes from either the DM is sitting at the table with you or the DM is serving you like a waiter. And if you want the DM to serve you, you pay them. Or at least they have the right to ask for a payment. In principle. Again, you don't have to pay, but you can't say they're in the wrong to make that demand as if it's something wrong. You can't speak righteously like, oh man, I can't believe they would do it. No. Bullshit. It is very believable that they do it. And if they're going to give you their labor like that, they have the right to. Period. End of story. There you go. Now, myself, I wouldn't charge, but I also wouldn't run raw. So my pleasure will be taken care of. And my pleasure is not taken care of, You don't get a seat at my table. I'll get my payment. I won't be a slave to you or no player. So my creativity will be met. It will be explored. I will have fun. So will you. And that's a social contract between me and the players. They get their creative ideas. They get to try things. They get to improvise. So do I. As long as you give me that as a player, yeah, I'm not a slave. I am getting to take care of my pleasure just like you are as a player. That's fair. But to sit there and try to debate that as if somebody who's enslaved themselves to you and given up all their pleasure only to serve yours, as if their labor, their sacrifice of their own fun, just to give you a good night, as if there's something wrong. It's like saying everybody who's serving you, everybody who's doing a job working for you, has no right to be paid for the job they're doing. Of course they do. Now I'm not like the delivery person. Like I think you should tip people, but should they get paid for the delivery? Of course. Should the company pay? Yes. So nothing wrong with paid game mastering under the circumstances that the game master and their pleasure and their fun is put aside only to cater to the players. And I would tell players that say that's wrong. I would say to them, well, you're selfish fucks. You're selfish, cold-hearted fucks that want someone to enslave themselves for you, and it will be at the expense of their pleasure only to serve you. So when you take somebody else's creativity and fun away and what they can enjoy only to serve only your needs and not serve theirs at all, you're not in a righteous position to speak as if they're in the wrong to demand money. Not really a debate on this. It's just that it's easy when you have there's no guy like me out here pushing back on the nonsense. Of course, people will push agendas. Man, we shouldn't have to pay because, of course, nobody wants to have to pay. Even when they're like they want to paint paying under those conditions as bad because they don't want to pay. It's a deceitful agenda. It's of course you don't want the game master who's running it raw to realize that they are in position to have the right to ask to be paid, and there's nothing wrong with it. You don't want DMs knowing that. Because imagine if DMs realize, well, if I'm running it wrong, it has nothing to do with my fun. And all I'm here is serving you. And it has nothing to do with me and my pleasure. Then I have the right to ask for money. People that don't want to pay don't want those guys realizing that. Of course, it's a deceitful agenda. They don't want those guys cluing in that they're in the right to demand money. I mean, that's why guys like me that's why I'll piss off the hobby, because I'm the guy who comes in and spoils a very successful, deceitful agenda. How many years have people in the old school especially had a lot of success making sure DMs don't realize they have the right to ask for money? Oh, no wonder guys like this Miles and Black Rose. This is why some old school people hate my fucking guts. It's not because I'm wrong. You could react, Black Rose. I think he's somewhere out in the water. No, but I'm with you. I would just never charge because I would never do it raw. That's it. Pretty simple. I want to run the game the way I want to run it. That's it. If player says, "Oh man, I'd rather you run second ed by the book," I'd be like, "Well, then you can go find someone you can pay. Good luck. Find someone that will be a slave to you. I won't be. Never." Now, if a game by the book, I mean, in reality, It's the freedom to make changes or judgment calls. Like even in old school, you might say these side games are raw, but still, as long as no, I get it's frowned upon. That's not my argument, Black Rose. We're talking about, is it right or wrong? Like, is it wrong for DMs that do that to ask for money? So you're off in left field right now, right? I'm obviously, clearly, I get some people are against it, but that's a deceitful agenda winning, Black Rose. Trust me, the people that are frowning upon it are fucking full of shit and two-faced. Let's be clear on that. Of course, they don't want the DM to realize they have the right to ask for money. That's a successful scam. That's all that is. It's like, whoa, they're having a lot of, you might have said it this way, Steven, over here, they're having a lot of success scamming people for their labor. Well, shit, dude, I get it. It would be really frowned upon that guys that have the right to ask for money started asking for it. Well, of course. I get it. I get there's an agenda. Very successful, deceitful scam agenda in some places. It's very successful in the old school too. So it's successful here, but here's what happens. Here's what I believe, Black Rose. I don't actually think it would fail, even where you're at. That's what everybody told guys here. Like, understand, same boat. It didn't just change because people started talking about it, Black Rose. Want to know how it changed? People just ignored what they were told. You can't do it, it's frowned upon. Okay, let me do it. But it's frowned upon. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to offer it out. Right, even in Norway. And what do people find out? Here's the truth, Black Rose. Here's the truth. When you get the paid game master in games, most people enjoy it. The game master isn't doing exactly what he wants, but he's being paid. The players are showing up with energy that they normally don't have when it's for free. They're paid. There's pressure to, like, they're going to show up and they're excited. And the DM is going to do it by the book, exactly how they want. And the DM is happy to do it because they're being paid. Whenever I've looked into paid game mastering, I agree with Matt Colville on one thing he said for sure in his video. Whenever you finally talk to the people that partake in it, 99.9.9.9% are happy with it. The guys getting paid are happy, and players paying to play are happy. The DM is shocked how energetic players are, and they're showing up consistently. Players are showing up consistently with energy and all having a great time together. So it's an extreme positive. That's another thing certain parts of this hobby don't want to hear. They don't want to hear how good it is. Now, I'm not saying that you should, like, I prefer just to run it my way, right? Let's see. What's in the water? I'm in the UK yet. Okay, it's a bit boring there. I guess Sour Rice Islands are a nice summer for a picnic. Otherwise, I'd recommend the. I hear. But that's what I would say there, Black Rose, is a lot of people don't realize just how positive the experience ends up being. Now, am I promoting it personally? No. But is it true that players report in a positive way en masse about paid gaming? They do. They do. Every DM that's getting paid reports back of the positivity in the relationships and the consistency with players. It's basically what's happening in paid gaming is what people want in the non-paid gaming part. So everything you want to have happen, where you're just getting together under a social contract with no money, is actually consistently happening for a lot of people with paid game mastering. And that's the truth. When you talk to those people, that's the absolute truth of it. Just saying. There. And that's a topic he went on about too. In the UK, you have 6% Norse blood. So that should be consolation. It depends, dude. It depends on where you're born. It's like, was your family from this part that was raped or from the other part? Like what raped part of the UK were you from? I hate to say it. I'm joking. Language joking. Okay. All right, guys. That's it's almost 2.5 hours. I hit on everything tonight, and it's hot here. It's really hot. That's it. Hate to break up the Norway conversation. I hope you guys got that sorted out. I love y'all. That's it. I think we're at the end of the subjects, and I think I said everything I had to say on it. I think everybody's said everything. If they want to say anything on it, they said everything they wanted to say on it. Yeah, I hear you. Okay. Love you guys.